Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, there's a major misconception here. Leftoids seem to think that people like me, people who are more on the conservative side of the political spectrum, don't care about the environment, that we just want to burn the world down for profits. We only care about ourselves and not the future of the planet or our children, and it's complete nonsense. I care about the environment probably a whole lot more than some of these leftoids do. I'm actually very environmentally conscious in my personal, everyday decisions. I don't delude myself into thinking that I could shame the world into acting a certain way that I could solve the world's problems by holding up traffic and holding up a sign and screeching a bunch of incoherent nonsense. I just educate myself on certain topics and I make decisions based on what I think is rational and logical. From my perspective, it starts with the individual. It starts with basic education and of course technological innovation. I know what I can control. I can control myself and my direct orbit, the people around me. That's what I can influence, and so I do my part. And you know what? I would love to partner with the left on issues involving the environment, but it's kind of difficult because, let's be completely honest, these leftoid, tree-hugging environmentalist hippies are full of crap, and 99% of the nonsense that they spew makes absolutely no sense. It's not logical. And so how do you meet in the middle? How do you work with somebody who's a deranged lunatic with not even a basic rudimentary fundamental understanding of basic economics and geopolitics? Let me show you the perfect example as some lunatic leftist activist storms onto the stage disrupting Josh Hawley during a Heritage Foundation event. Listening to this leftoid activist speak, well, I actively got dumber. I probably lost a couple IQ points. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, the activist left does it again. Take a look at this moment right over here.
Not only massive, but increasingly modernized, is poised for a cross-strait invasion of Taiwan.
I think you're forgetting that
and what do our leadership...
We have the largest military in the world. We spend over $1 trillion every year. And the state, your state of Missouri, is over half of people are in poverty. China is not our enemy. The climate crisis is. We need to be this serious about the climate crisis. We need diplomacy in Ukraine and with China. We are continuing to have more aggression with China, and we are spending more on our military than 100 countries combined. The climate crisis is our common threat.
It's interesting. This administration wants to use the climate crisis as a justification for its agenda in Ukraine and elsewhere. Maybe they ought to visit with that gal.
Yep, I wasn't exaggerating when I said another lunatic leftist activist, but the most stunning and frankly the most idiotic part of this little clip is that one quote: China is not our enemy. The climate crisis is. Now, first of all, the idea that China isn't our enemy is a little bit interesting, considering China seems to directly, openly state that they are in fact our enemy, and they seem hellbent on world domination. But what's truly backwards about that claim, what's so dumb it's giving me a headache, is the hypocrisy of the statement itself. The climate crisis is our enemy, not China. If the climate crisis is your enemy, then from my perspective, the activists' public enemy number one should be China, not Josh Hawley, not the United States Republican Party. I mean, this is really, really rudimentary stuff. This is data that everybody should understand and everyone's seen before. Here's global carbon emissions, yearly carbon emission trends based on nations and regions. The United States and even the EU is actually a pretty small player when it comes to polluting. And you know, leftists are warning that if we don't stop, if we don't slow down the emissions, the world is going to end in 9 years, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez lectures us. But what more do you want? The Western world, the EU, and North America both are trending downwards in terms of carbon emissions. We're actually doing a pretty damn swell job. I mean, major corporations can't even really exist in the Western world unless they have a climate pledge or a sustainability pledge. Companies in the Western world have to adhere to that. In some cases, there's regulations and policies that force them to, or in most cases, it's just PR, relations, customer relations. They have to pledge to slowly innovating and essentially cleaning up their act, minimizing their carbon footprint. because that's actually something that's important here in the Western world. You know, all these screeching leftists are screeching for no reason. It's already happening. It's happening through capitalism, through free market innovation. That's what customers want. That's where the Western customer psyche currently is, and therefore companies have to adhere. The problem isn't local. It's not a domestic issue. It's not a Western issue. It's happening in China, yet every single time you mention that to these activist leftoids, you get these brain rot responses where it just makes it impossible to take these individuals seriously. Here's Greta Thunberg, the most incredible intellect of the modern day. As the Babylon Bee put it in their satirical headline, Greta Thunberg teaches everything on Masterclass. Well, here she is being questioned by BBC Politics on why her activism isn't targeting China.
We're being asked in this country to remove gas boilers, change the way we heat and insulate our houses. Many families will have big financial hits on all of those kind of things, and they'll be sitting there at home thinking, why should we be doing this when China, for instance, is still building more coal-fired power stations?
Yeah.
Why should we be leading? What would you say to them?
Exactly. That's what everyone says. And that's what makes it so hard, because you can always blame someone else. In Sweden, for instance, we can say, why should we do this when you just like look at the UK? I mean, it's always someone that's bigger that you can blame on. And that's why it's more important that we need to work together internationally and globally to make sure that everyone does this transition. Not the least pushing China, who are still building coal power plants, which today is quite out of touch with the reality, if you ask me.
I mean, what a ridiculous response. Once again, let's go right back to the chart. The fight isn't here, the fight theoretically is in Asia. The entire continent of Asia is trending upwards. They're polluting more and more every single year. There's no pledge to sustainability, there's no climate pledge. It's actual profits above all. Air quality, drinking water, oceans, carbon emissions, be damned. Yet we have to sit here and listen to these insufferable leftist twats lecture us that we're the problem and that the blame shouldn't be shifted elsewhere. No, you're a nutcase. Please get away from me. And what's even more laughable is their proposed solution. It always seems to be the same damn thing. Bigger government, higher taxes. That's how you solve the problem. Completely ridiculous. You know, there's certain places where it's appropriate, where government can act. I know libertarians that are listening are probably getting triggered right now because their ideal world is no government and literally zero tax. But there's some social programs that make sense. Services that target very specific people. You know, for instance, what Jon Stewart was fighting for, getting better healthcare services, targeting 9/11 survivors, or fixing the VA, for instance, getting better health and mental health care for military veterans. There's certain things that make sense. Better services for those at the absolute bottom of the economic spectrum, sure, it makes sense. Universal healthcare, ridiculous. But very specific targeted programs that make sense within the scope of the budget that the country can actually afford, that's fiscally responsible. That makes sense. Even infrastructure spending and some environmental protection spending, in many cases it makes sense. But the problem is, the government has become so bloated, so corrupt, and a point that Josh Hawley made is going to help me get to the point that I'm trying to get to. Instead, this administration, Democrats, and even Republicans would rather spend over $100 billion fighting a proxy war in Ukraine than do anything actually productive. You want to talk about the climate crisis being the war that we should be fighting, as your Democrat president continues to fund the military-industrial complex's wet dream in Ukraine, continues to spend taxpayer dollars like a financially illiterate superstar athlete with a cocaine problem. You want to target Josh Hawley and Republicans as the problem, when the reason we can't have nice things is because Democrats don't know how to frickin' spend money. Well, instantly, you lost me. And that tends to be the case when it comes to discussions or negotiating with leftoids. You tend to lose me because you're living in a fantasy land. I prefer to live in the real world rather than your alternate reality. And that's why we just can't be friends. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one.